Hello, everybody. I'm happy everybody was able to make it. Thank you again. Tonight we are excited to have Debra.
Yes.
I'm sure most of you either work with her directly or indirectly. She's awesome. She did a lot of the projects we manage, and she can go in, let you know what's going on, and if it needs to be fixed, how to fix it correctly. Make you, they friends forever probably.
Long time.
So I'm really happy that we're growing the community here, and the biggest thing from the REI group that I'm trying to get is share information, share resources, get everybody on the same par, get better, and success obviously. But if you have any question and the connections here, you have awesome people in here. Please connect.
Can everyone hear me? Okay. Basically, I've been in the lead paint business for over 22 years, but I started as a property manager for Advanced Property Rental. So I managed rental property for about 23 years. And this was my side business. I started it as my side hustle, lunch hours, weekends, before work, whatever, until I had enough clientele build up to go out on my own, which I eventually did in 2012, I believe, 2011. But nonetheless, so I do have the unique ability in that I can see this from all the angles. From the landlord, time is money. I'm protecting the tenant. I'm protecting the owner. That's what I'm there to do. I'm an independent, but I am licensed by the state, and I am a risk assessor. An MDE licensed risk assessor is the highest level inspector that you can be. You can't just jump in and be a risk assessor. You have to have, you start out as a visual inspector, you have to have a year's experience as an inspector technician, and then you can move up to the risk assessor. Now, what makes the risk assessor a more valuable person for you than the visual inspector? The visual inspectors cannot tell you if you have lead paint or not. They cannot tell you how to mitigate lead paint. The only thing they can do is go in and take those dust wipe samples and test for unsafe levels of lead dust. Here are some things that I can offer you all. First of all, there's the Title 10 inspections. Now, I get a lot more of those in Ocean City than I do around Salisbury, but I do a lot of them. I mean, sometimes I'm getting one a week because people are becoming much more educated about lead paint. And the lead-based survey that I would go in, if you called me up and you said, we have a home buyer, okay, that wants to find out if they have lead paint there. Normally, I get referred, there's 3 or 4 of the home inspectors running around that I work with, and they don't do lead paint, so they refer me. And then in return, I try to show up at the same time they do. It makes it more convenient for everybody. We kill all the inspections at one time. But what I can do is I go in for the lead-based paint survey, and I do the exact same inspection that I would be doing for the lead-free certification if you were a landlord. It's a surface by surface read of the painted surfaces inside and outside of the property, and they get a report. Now, if you were a landlord and I did that for you, you wouldn't get a report, you'd get a lead-free certificate from the state of Maryland. Now, when I do them down Ocean City, I'm down there all the time now. So what I tell, if I go down there and it's condo and they say, well, I'm not thinking of renting it, but I might in the future. Sometimes if I know you have a lead-free property, I might encourage you to go ahead and get the lead-free certificate for $10 more versus the report. Because for $10 more, you get it recorded in the state database as lead-free. And if you ever sell your property, it travels with the property. Now, Title 10 says that if I gave you the report and you sold the property, you're legally liable to turn the report over to the next owner. But with the lead-free certificate and with MDE's new online portal, everything I do now is online. So the lead-free inspections that I did prior to December of last year when MDE went online, The only people that have the XRF readings are the owners and myself, because MDE didn't want all that paperwork. But everything we do now, we do right inside of their portal. So if anybody loses any paperwork, anybody can go online and look up certificates. You can go in there, you can look up the certificate, the readings, everything right in the portal. But the lead-based paint survey is a biggie. Sometimes you have a client that may be an investor, like yourselves, and you go look at a property and you're like, I don't know, you know. So that's where you exercise the Title 10 and say, I want to have a lead-based paint survey, okay? I call it an XRF pre-shoot. I'll go to the property with you. I don't produce a report, but you take notes and we walk around and we shoot whatever surfaces and we stand there and we discuss it. I might say, man, this is easy. You need to buy this. You only got this, this, and this, and you're home free. Or I might say, oh Lord, it's everywhere, and it's, you know, and then you can get out of the contract that way. But that is very beneficial and the bigger landlords do that too. They'll have me. They have a unit turnover coming up and the place is demolished. Okay, it's wrecked or whatever. They're going to go in, they're going to spend a lot of money. So they say, Debbie, go over there. And I go over there with a black Sharpie and everything that's lead, I just put X's on, and then their crews come in behind me and they rip it all out. But it saves, you can never tell by looking. I've even been fooled before. So it does save money sometimes because they find out they don't have to rip out the whole staircase, or they don't have to rip out all the baseboards. If you don't have to rip it out, you don't want to. And there are always ways. Abatement is one of two things. It's either remove and replace the component in its entirety, or enclose it behind a hard, rigid barrier that is meant to be permanent, last more than 20 years, is mechanically fastened to the surface and sealed around the edges so no dust can escape. Then that's acceptable abatement. So examples of that are vinyl siding, customizing. I've seen some really creative carpentry on stair stringers, you know, because nobody wants to rip the staircase out. Well, you can go over it with a layer of Luan or plywood or something like that. There's always, these are things that I can tell you and help you decide what you want to do to achieve what you want. Now, sometimes it's not feasible. You know, it's not a magic gun. I can't wave it and all the lead disappear. You know, but if there's a way to get you to the lead-free certificate, then that's what you want, the way you want to go. So that's called an XRF pre-shoot. Right now, I charge $125 to go out and just do that. Okay. Then you move on. For the landlords, they have the full risk reduction dust wipe inspections. I do those as well. And the limited lead-frees and the lead-free. Okay. If there are any people out here with the limited lead-free certificates, they have to be inspected every 2 years on that date that's on there, re-inspect by, for the limited lead-frees. If a form is not entered into that portal by midnight on that date, I call that the drop dead date, then that certificate's expired. And if I was the inspector that did, say I did some lead-free for Lynn, and Lynn calls me up and she says, oh my God, Debbie, I forgot to get that re-inspected. It's not the end of the world because they're my readings. I can go back, just visually inspect the exterior, and then I don't have to do the shoot again because I can use my readings, but I do have to generate a new certificate. Now, there's some landlords who have recently forgot to call somebody by these dates, and I wasn't the original XRF person, and now that person's gone. So they've had to redo their whole projects all over again. So I caution you, if you have limited lead-frees, watch those dates, particularly if I wasn't the original person that did the XRFs. I also do the HUD projects. So I work with almost all the municipalities, Salisbury Neighborhood Housing, Habitat for Humanity, a bunch of them. There is a ton of HUD money out there right now. They dumped it out, okay? The HUD monies, they use them for rehab projects. In the state of Maryland, because the HUD guidelines are less stringent than the Maryland Department of the Environment rules, in the state of Maryland, HUD defaults to the Maryland regs. So if there's a rehab project that comes out, they not only have to use, whether it's a homeowner or a landlord or tenant situation, they still have to use the MDE trained workers. But with HUD, it's a little bit different in that it's based upon the dollar amount of the project. Most projects fall between $5,000 and $25,000. In those cases, I go out, I do a pre-assessment, I tell them if there's lead, I point out any hazards. If there are lead hazards, then they have to address the hazards that I point out to them. And I give them options, control options. They can, most of the time it's interim controls, but there are cases where I've went out there and the windows are so bad and they're friction surfaces, and I'm like, no, you have to abate, you have to replace the windows. Projects over $25,000, and there are a couple of them that are out there right now, require full abatement if it's federal money. Now here's where the two overlap. I have seen some landlords get HUD grant money. Okay, so then it comes in. Now you're talking, or if you have HUD tenants, and you know how they go out every year and they do that annual inspection. Well, if they find any flake and peel and chip and paint, now they've triggered a modified risk reduction under the Maryland landlord rules. And the modified risk reduction is the dust wipe test that's done at the change of occupancy, plus the old visual inspection that used to be done. I have to go through, make sure, open, shut all the doors, make sure they don't rub and stick, make sure your bathroom floors have smooth vinyl or something over them. It's a list of things, but the more important thing is that you have to provide me with a contractor supervisor statement of work that the contractor has uploaded into that MDE portal that says everything was done in compliance with the COMAR regs, blah, blah, blah. And then I have to go into that portal, find that statement, and attach it. Now, therein lies a problem in that there's a shortage out there, especially after COVID, of these trained workers. I do know a company in Ocean City that just sent 8 people to be contractor supervisors. But for the majority of the work out there, you don't need the abatement license. You need the 2-day contractor supervisor license, because you can do replace windows, replace doors, normal things like, you know, what they would call under the repair and maintenance activities. Even though they're abatement, they can be done with that 2-day license. The 4-day, you know, it's the intent of the project. The 4-day license is the abatement contractor supervisor. That's going to come into play, not for most of you, but into the larger HUD projects. Yeah, and I would now Warwick has it a couple of times a year, 2 or 3. You do have to sign up for the courses now through the portal. So you have to go into that portal and sign up, and they have to say, okay, you can go take the class, contact the aerosol monitoring. I use aerosol monitoring mostly because none of the classes, my level is not taught down here. I have to go over there. But if you ever find yourself in a position where you can't get to Warwick, I recommend aerosol monitoring, AMA. They're a real easy 2-hour drive over to Hanover, where the casino is, Hanover, Maryland. And they're a working lab. So they, you know, you're never going to have it where they call you up 2 days ahead of time, say, we didn't have enough people sign up, so we had to cancel the class. One time I went there, and I'm the only person that showed up. It was the longest class of my life, all day. Exterior waivers. Okay, between November 1st and April 1st, MDE recognizes that it's not the prime time to paint outdoors. So now your tenants moved out and your whole outside of your house is all flaking, peeling, and chipping. Well, for you to try to paint it in those months, it's too cold, you're wasting your money. So what they allow you to do is get an exterior waiver. That comes from the local municipality. It's real easy in Salisbury. I email Trish. I say, Trish, I'm requesting on behalf of the owner an exterior waiver for this property, blah, blah, and it comes right back to me that day. It's a form letter, really. And the good thing about the city of Salisbury is they build an extra 30 days in, which they're allowed to. The city gives you till April the 30th. The law really only says till April the 1st you have to have it done. Well, March is always our coldest month, so I think that's why the city allows it to go out. With an exterior waiver, then we can ignore the outside for the moment, dust wipe the inside, get your provisional certificate, move your tenant in, but you have to get the work on the outside completed, and that contractor supervisor has to sign off on it. That's another reason why, if you have rental properties, you should be a contractor supervisor. It's a 2-day class, and then every 2 years you just have 1-day refresher. And my last 2 refreshers I got to do by Zoom, so that was really good. As a risk assessor, I can pretty much do anything, except within telling you what you can do, how you can fix things, ways to abate without ripping everything out. That's what I'm here for, to help everybody out. And like I said, I know time is money, so one of the things I pride myself on is service. I try to get to everybody within a day or 2 at the most. And I try to provide all of my larger clients, I send them out my entire vacation schedule and say, these are the days I'm closed, so they can plan ahead. But if I can help you out in any way, I'd be more than happy to. Do you have any questions? Yes.
So, in my case, I don't have any existing properties that I have to worry about, but I'm looking for a property. So, with that in mind, thinking about this, how do I approach it? What's the first question that I ask myself when I'm looking for a property? If I find one, I guess it's the year, right?
Yes, go to SStat. That's the first thing you want to do, is you want to go to SStat and look up the age of the property. Then, if you're buying it and it was already a rental, you can either ask the owner if they have a current certificate, but you can also just go online, because that portal is public lookup now. Everybody can go in there and look up. Tenants, judges, just go on there to the portal, and you go up in the corner where it says certificates, click on that, and you put the address in. And if there are any and all certificates that have ever been done are now in that portal. Now, back to your question. When you go to buy the property, okay, you can exercise the Title 10 if you want me to go over there with you and tell you if how much lead is there and what you could or could not do with it. Number 2, if you're buying it as a rental, the law says that you have to register it with Maryland Department of the Environment within 30 days of the settlement. So even if you say you bought one from Cindy, she had a current tenant in there and a valid cert. You buy it from her, the cert transfers to you as soon as you register the property. So you wouldn't have to have it re-inspected as long as the cert was valid when you bought it. The certificates always belong to the units. The dust wipe certificates are what they call temporary. They're only meant to last the length of the occupancy of the tenant. The lead-free and limited lead-free, they're permanent certificates, and they exempt you out of the law. So if I certify your property lead-free, MDE doesn't care about it anymore. They get $10, and that's it. Then after that, they're not going to bother you anymore, and they're not going to care if your paint's flaking, peeling, and chipping. But if it is an affected property, meaning it has lead and it's pre-1978, then all of your paint, not just the lead paint, All of it has to be intact. I can't tell you how many times I show up, well, that's brand new, that's not lead paint. Well, the law doesn't say flake and peel and chip and deteriorating lead paint, because only risk assessors can tell you if it's lead paint. Visual inspectors are out there and they can't tell you, they can't make that determination. So even if they're smart enough to know that's a piece of Luan that probably was bought last week, they're not allowed to. So it's all paint. And people have a problem with deteriorating paint. Deteriorating paint is more than flaking, peeling, and chipping. It is any time the paint is separating from that substrate, it's deteriorating paint. It can be alligatoring, chalking, blistering, bubbling. You know, all that paint can look intact, and if I take my finger and touch it and it pops, that's deteriorating paint. So that's a biggie too. But there, you know, in those cases, the paint is supposed to be removed to the substrate primed or whatever caused the problem corrected, and then repainted. The other big thing is paint chips on the ground. Don't get paint chips on the ground. You know, I know if you're using trained workers, they know this, but if there are people doing it that may not know this, Lord, tell them to put plastic down on the ground, because it's a whole lot easier to roll that plastic up with the paint chips in it than to get out there with a shop vac and start sucking dirt or scooping them up, because the paint chips break when you rake them. And lead is a heavy metal. It gets in the soil, it stays there. Right. The Maryland law says, the Maryland lead paint law says, that if a local municipality has any form of landlord licensing at all, then they are not allowed to give you that landlord license until you show them a lead paint certificate. Okay, so most of all, the municipalities have been really good at it. Now, Ocean City, you know, Ocean City never really fit in the law, because they have, you know, weekly rentals, short-term rentals, long-term rentals. People rent for a week in the summer, then they rent all winter long. So MDE kind of ignored Ocean City until the year before COVID. That December, they were in Ocean City and they educated Ocean City. And Ocean City had sent out about their first round of letters, because I was really getting busy, and then COVID hit. Okay, so it all went on the back burner. Well, Ocean City just sent all those letters out again. So I've been spending a lot of time down Ocean City here lately. Now, the rule of thumb for Ocean City is 90 days or more. If it's 90 days or less, if it's less than 90 days, they don't have to comply. But if it's 90 days or more, then they now have to have lead paint certificates. The judges won't hear your case unless you have a lead paint certificate number if it's an affected property. And keep in mind now that those judges can sit up there and look those certificates up, just like they do people's driver's license. The one change that's come about recently is the CDC has lowered the blood lead level again to 3.5. Okay, and every time the CDC lowers something, Maryland lowers it too. So that's going to be forthcoming. When they lowered it from whatever it was down to 5, they told the inspectors that we could inspect about 130,000 more modified risk reductions that year. Now, I didn't have that many down here, because I will tell you the Salisbury property owners they're great. I might even be able to count less than 5 that I would say are not great. But for the most part, the property owners in this town do everything. They've always been doing everything. This law started back in '95 with House Bill 960, and they were going up to Annapolis right from the beginning. So the Salisbury area property owners were on it from the beginning. Now, this is the newest, latest analyzer on the market. It's only been out for about a year. It's a SciAps X550 lead. The difference between this and the old Nitons is this does not have a radioactive source in it. So it's not slowing down on me. It's not going to cost me $11,000 every 4 years to have a new source put in it. This produces radiation, but it has an X-ray tube in it. And all the readings come back in 3 seconds or less with no inconclusive readings. Basically, to start it up, it runs through a self-calibration that takes about 15 seconds. And then I do 3 calibration checks on this block, and that's it, I'm ready to go. Let me show you how this works. Okay, so I've turned it on, it's ran its little 15-second thing through here, and then it does a PC calibration check. So I just put it on this block, pull the trigger 3 times, it's an average of 3 readings. And then it's ready to go. And I have a custom library that I've developed in there, because when I go into a house to do if I'm going in to do a full shoot, it's room, component, substrate. So if I walk into a room and I see 4 baseboards and they all appear to have the same substrate, same painting history, then I'm only going to shoot 1. It's representative of them all. But if I walk in the room and I see a wood door and a metal door, now I have to shoot both of them because your component or the substrate changed. So it's room, component, substrate, go through the whole house inside and out. So now it's calibrated, it's ready to go. I just hit start, and then I can tell it room, floor, side, component, substrate, color, condition, and an address. And basically all I'm going to do is walk up to these surfaces, pull the trigger, and in 3 seconds it's going to come back and give me a reading, negative or positive. Negative. So I love this a whole lot better than the old Niton. It's a lot quicker. The other one, it was slow. The way the old ones work, radiation sources are constantly decaying. So mine was about 4 years old, and I was bending over waiting so long for that thing to get a reading that I thought I would pass out. But the sources for those other guns all come from Russia, so nobody's getting them resourced right now. So I thought it was prudent to go ahead and buy a new one before everybody started doing it, and the price went up.
Thank you.
Yeah. Would anybody like to try this?
I'll try in a minute.
Radioactive.
If anybody wants to, definitely stick around. Order some food if you like to at the bar. I just want to say thank you so much for Debbie to coming over today.
Oh,
it's
thank
really
you.
a pleasure. She did many of my properties, and always, she said, hey, if you want it, that's free, which I always want to do that. This and that needs to be done. I just want to plug in for next month. We're gonna have 1031 exchanges. If anybody wants to learn about that, it's April 20th. It's 5:30 p.m. It's gonna be right here. Bring your friends. Bring some questions. Stick around tonight as well. We'd like to have you guys. Chat with everybody. I think have good people over here. You want to mingle a little bit and have some food and just talk, ask questions, whatever.
One